the CSS on campus for this fall semester with the spring semester of 2020 to 2021. And I'm here to present with you Aerospace Corporations. And with me, I have Ryan. And Ryan, can you introduce us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, yeah. Before I do that, how many people do we have online? Do you have an idea of who's online?
Online right now, we have about 14 people or 13 people.
Okay, and they're mostly computer science students, is that fair?
Yes, and most of our computer science students.
Okay, sure, yeah. So my name is Ryan Speelman. I'm the principal director of the cybersecurity subdivision at Aerospace. We're about 70 cybersecurity professionals that whose mission is to secure the space enterprise for from everything from ground systems to links to spacecraft themselves, and then we get into non-space systems as well. We get into other critical infrastructures, and we have folks in my organization. We have folks all over the country. Our main sites are Los Angeles, Chantilly, Virginia. We have some folks up in Maryland and Colorado Springs, and then we have a couple people in Albuquerque and a couple people in Houston. So we're kind of a distributed organization, and I'll talk a little bit later, I guess, about my background. I think one of the questions, Tuan, you were asking was how did my career end up where it is, and maybe I'll even start as an intern from Aerospace.
Yeah, and I think later on I'll just go into the Q&A sections, and I'll just ask you like one-to-one questions, and you don't have to show the whole question list. I think based on that presentation.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. Let me start with these charts. I think you've seen them all. You can see these charts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just kind of go through it quickly. I know Anthony went through this a couple months ago, so I don't know if I'll just try and jog your memory. I'm happy to talk about any of this stuff. But we're the Aerospace Corporation, so we're a federally funded research and development center whose primary customer is the Space and Missile Systems Center at Los Angeles Air Force Base, which means that we're responsible for architecture, design, launch operations for the Air Force, and then we end up getting into some other customers such as NRO, NASA, as well. But we're the primary FFRDC for SMC. There's lots of change going on in our business, and a lot of transition from kind of the old way of doing things into kind of more modern, things like cloud infrastructure, things like cybersecurity, things like AI and ML. It's changing the whole way we do business, and it's our job to lead our customer through those transitions. There's a lot of exciting things going on. I'll flip down here. Let's see. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit. You can see this chart, right? The one talking about DOD programs, intelligence community, civil systems. Is that true? Tuan, can you see that chart?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought, yeah.
No problem.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. So there's all the SMC programs, Missile Defense Agency, Air Force Space Command, which is Space Force now. So we're responsible for all those. We're also responsible for all the intelligence community space systems, and then we get into civil like NOAA, NASA, even some DHS, NSA, which gets in the nuclear world, and then other defense space, Stratcom, Pentagon, etc. So we're kind of one of the things we do is bridge the program. So one really nice feature of the company is when we solve a technical challenge for one program, we can deliver the solution and for other programs without having to repay the same price over and over and over again, which is one of the things we bring to the table. This gives you an idea. This chart talks about some of our missions. Obviously the classified ones are just kind of left off here and just classified programs, but everyone's heard of GPS, right? So aerospace played a huge role in inventing GPS a long time ago. We still play a huge role in the replenishment of GPS, putting new systems up. The systems are, more anti-jam, more secure. With some other features on them. Certainly new signal types as we help invent them. It's a good program because everyone's heard of it. Everyone uses GPS on a day-to-day basis, but there was once a time without GPS, and one of our jobs is to make sure there isn't a time in the future without GPS. Obviously, all the military comm satellites, WGS, for example, advanced VHF, missile warning is on here. Even military weather is a big one, and that's on here as well. And there's a whole gamut of other systems. So Anthony hopefully mentioned this, but aerospace is broken up into two primary organizations. We have engineers that support specifically what are called program offices. Those are engineers that are assigned to a particular program. So you could be assigned to GPS, right? That could be your day-to-day life. My organization and Anthony's as well are assigned to technical areas. So we're assigned to cybersecurity. So it means that we're in a matrix organization. So we are within the division. Both Anthony and my groups are within the information systems and cyber division. There are these 6 divisions within what we call engineering technology groups. So there's electronics and sensors. There's our group, information systems and cyber. There's communication technologies and engineering. That's a group I came from, and I'll talk to them about what I did there. There's vehicle systems, system engineering, and then the physical science laboratories where they do, more, physics and chemistry and material science and some things like that are set up some really cool experiments, but that's kind of its own division. So at Aerospace, it changes pretty regularly, but we're about 4,000 employees, about 31 or 3,200 of which are engineers. And most of the engineers are divided either into the program offices where you're assigned to a program, or you're in an engineering technology group where you're assigned to a technical area. And we're approximately a $1.1 billion company. Now we're a nonprofit, which means revenue equals cost every year. We make $0 every year. And that's important. It's actually a really important feature of aerospace. That our job is to make sure the right.
So I think he just cut off. So hopefully he'll rejoin back soon. So with that, I also want to introduce you with the, hey Ryan, Ryan's back. I think he can you hear us, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we lost you for a few seconds there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just explaining that we're a nonprofit, and it's really important for us to be a nonprofit because we only care about the right technical solution for the programs, and we operate in the government's best interest. In other words, we don't make more money if technical solution A versus B is selected. Our job is to select the right technical solution. So it kind of frees us from those conflicts of technical interest, which is nice.
I see. And I think you're sharing the screen also. Do you want to share the screen?
Oh, did it stop sharing? Okay,
yeah.
Hang on.
All right.
Okay, how's that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. And again, we our primary offices are in El Segundo, which is Los Angeles, right by LAX. Colorado Springs and Chantilly, Virginia are our big facilities, but we have people co-located with lots of different customers kind of all over the country.
I see.
And we have a very large intern population. I think you've seen this chart. My group last year had 20 interns for this last summer. We're probably expecting more like 14 or 15 this year. But we have a large intern population. It's really important for us. as it really helps our talent pipeline coming into the company. And our intern program is really important for us because it lets the interns understand what the company is like, what the job is like, and it makes us understand what the interns capabilities are and whether there's a good fit for full-time employment. So the program is very important to us, and I'll talk a little bit about what interns do at the company as well, or at least in my group.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Okay. So I can stop sharing those charts.
Yeah. And I can also share the positions that I think the QR code that will send you to the link that that you can use to sign up or drop in your resume. So with this, there's internships and get new graduate positions, and the QR code, you can scan it and it will take you over there. All right, so that would take us into our sections of just talking about genuinely about what you do, and then if you're comfortable with sharing it, it will be a great opportunity for us to learn about you and as the corporation and what you do as a whole. So, all right, everyone. So I think first I want to get into a little bit about your background or how did you get started. So I want to go into your education. So let's talk about your education, because I briefly mentioned seen your bio before. I think you graduated from UCLA. So can you tell us a little bit more about that experiences and what it was like over there?
Of course, yeah. So so I got my bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering from UCLA, focused in embedded systems. And I didn't start in cybersecurity. In fact, I've only been running a cybersecurity organization for 3 years now. I started as an intern at the company within the wireless communications group, a prototyping group. And it was a fantastic experience, both as an intern, and then I stayed on as a full-time employee. So while I was finishing my master's, I spent a summer as an intern and then started as a full-time employee. And what I remember about it at the time, and what I've always taken with me from the internship experience, is that I was thrown in on day one to relevant projects. What I was doing at the time was writing FPGA code for DSP, digital signal processing applications. And I was in the critical path. I mean, what I was doing as an intern was had to get done. We had a delivery date. There was it happened to be a classified mission, which I wasn't cleared for at the time. We were doing the work unclassified, but there was a particular event that we were waiting for as an intern. When I was an intern, we had to build some signal processing equipment to measure and analyze this event. And this event was going to happen on a certain day, 7 weeks from, I think, when I started, or something to that effect, the first event. And so we were building code, and I was working with the engineers that were responsible for it on day one of my internship. And if that system didn't get delivered, then we had a very expensive classified system that was going to have a fault that we didn't know what was causing. And that was what we were trying to diagnose. So it was cool in the sense that it gave me experiences what my real full-time job would be like. And I will say that when I went to my full-time job, nothing changed. That was exactly what my full-time job was like. And we were dealing with one-off problems, that were in the critical path. We always felt, a little bit rushed, like, stuff has to get out the door quickly. I like that environment. Some other people may not, but I think that's one of the features of the company.
I see. Okay. So I think I want to take a little bit a step before that. Sure. So I understand that right now it's a little bit hard to get internships into especially cybersecurity, because it's such a probably a really evolved or recently evolved field. So how did you, I guess, what kind of projects did you to land your first internships, for example? And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you're talking about my internship experience, which was in wireless, or our interns this year in cyber?
So when you so talking about internship in general, again, the internships is really hard. So can you tell us about what kind of projects you did before that kind of get into the wireless communications, right? yeah, so any projects you did before getting that first internships?
Sure. Yeah. So they hired me because at school, the thing that really resonated with me at school, and to this day, I will tell you what I'm a technical expert in is FPGA design, and that's what resonated with me at school. So those were the classes at school that I always got an A or an A plus in that came easy to me. There's some other classes that were, so usually you have these classes that resonate with you. They come easy to you, and then you have classes that maybe you have to work a little bit harder just to get a B. Those were the kind of classes that really, really resonated with me. And so when I showed up, and that's what I put on my resume. And I recommend other people do that. What are you really good at? What do you want the hiring manager to take away from your resume? Should be right up top that this is what I am. This is what I do, because you want the right fit to find you, right? So if you put a bunch of random things that you're okay at up front in your resume because you think that's what other people want to hear, you may walk yourself into a trap where you end up with a bad fit because somebody assumes something. And you may get the internship, but for me, the match was more clear. They hired me to do what I was good at, which always at UCLA came easy to me, and fortunately didn't hire me to do some stuff that didn't come as easy. And so I kind of walked into it. Now, I will say that when you start in a corporate environment, things are a lot different than they are in a lab environment. So you have a lot of learning to do, but I was ready for that learning because the classes I had taken had prepared me for that, if that makes sense. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a great answer. So put on probably when looking for the first internship, probably the classes that you took is more, I guess, a lot important. So putting it on top and getting recognized or molded or something, that would be something the advice.
Yeah. So I've looked at tens of thousands of resumes in my life probably, and I will tell you, I can't tell you what every hiring manager looks at when they look for resumes, but for me, you have 10 seconds when you look at a resume to start with, and in those 10 seconds, you're deciding whether you're going to look at more at this resume or not. And you don't need to be a hit with every hiring manager. You're sending your resume out to lots of jobs, so you need some small portion of the hiring managers to say, hey, this is my person. In those 10 seconds, I'm looking at the top few bullets, what they say, and if that's what I need, if that's a possible fit, if you're telling your story, then I'll spend minutes looking. I'm not saying I look at 10 seconds and I'm done with the resume. If it passes that initial, hey, this is a possibility, then I'll spend a couple minutes studying, going down below. But as you write your resumes, what I'd really advise people to do is think of yourself as a hiring manager. Assume you have 10, 15 seconds, and they're going to read the top few things to see if they want to continue reading this resume, and then think about what story you're trying to tell them. What do you want them to walk away? This person's an expert in something. So for me, I don't remember what my resume said. I'm sure I know a lot more about resume writing than I did when I was an intern, but I'm sure I put that I was a really good FPGA developer up front. Somehow I told that story, and that got me to read the rest of it, look at the GPA, look at the class I've taken, and got an interview. And the reason you want that to be such a good fit is when I walked into the interview, they were expecting an FPGA developer, and therefore the questions they were asking revolved around that. If they were asking for something else, a physicist, for example, I presumably would have bombed the interview because that's not who I was. So you do want to align your resume to the jobs that you really, are good at and want to be picked up by those particular hiring managers. It's okay if 99% of hiring managers don't follow up with your resume because you're not looking for 1,000 jobs, but you want the ones that do to be aligned such that you have a good chance at that interview. Because if you're just interviewing and getting turned down because you're not a fit for those jobs, that's a waste of your time as well.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, the FPGA that you talked about is a class that you took in your school, and that's related to was it some circuitry, or what is the course called? Because I think FPGA is a little bit new for us.
Oh, yeah, FPGA. So they're field programmable gate arrays. So it's a lot of digital logic, and think of them as and you can look them up certainly, but they're, there's Xilinx and Altera are the common vendors, Microsemi. Think of them as kind of halfway between a CPU where you're writing, more traditional C or Python, and an ASIC where the circuit is designed and it's fixed. There are a bunch of logic elements and you can program what they do, but you don't write C or Python for them, or those kind of languages. You're doing manipulation of the of digital logic basically. So they're very good for real-time processing and things like that.
I see. And for us, I think for the CS students who look into cybersecurity, what we see will be some courses you think you would recommend them taking, or as you look through all of the resumes, what are you specifically, or the courses in general, are you looking for?
Yeah. So myself and our managers are looking for a couple of things, right? One is we want you to be an expert in something that isn't security related. So I don't actually tend to resonate with people that have cybersecurity degrees as much, or at least not as an undergrad. I would rather get a CS student or a double E student and have them be very good at that particular field. And rather than starting from a cybersecurity standpoint, because when you're a security person, you need to know the ins and outs of what you're trying to do. So if you're writing secure software, I don't want you not to know anything about software, right? And just say, hey, I'm going to tell you how to make secure software. I want you to be an expert in software, and then I want you to add on the how do you secure it, what are the vulnerabilities, all that stuff. Same with a double E. If we're talking about PCBs, wireless comm, obviously in our systems we have wireless links from the ground to the spacecraft. If somebody's trying to break into that, I don't want somebody who just knows cybersecurity principles to tell me how to secure a wireless link. I want an expert in wireless communications who also knows some security principles. And so we usually look for people that are experts in their particular field, whether it's computer science or double E or whatever. And usually I know there's a bunch of subfields to that, whether it's operating systems or networks or whatever, or just I'm a really good software developer is fine as well. And then on top of that, we're looking for people that have a cyber interest. So I would rather see a resume that's a really good software developer who then started doing things outside of school, maybe joined some capture the flag events or started a cybersecurity club at school or whatever. Because what that shows me is their training is in the primary field and their interests are in security. And that's, for us, that's been a lot more successful path.
I see. Okay. So I would say to overall summarize to your point, that would be to focus on the fundamental, right? So but then also taking a side interest in the cybersecurity and doing what you really like about cybersecurity, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I would apply that even outside of cybersecurity. So I always recommend, when I started out, I was saying, okay, my goal is to eventually broaden up, and that's one of the reasons I took the position within cybersecurity. But before you decide to broaden up, I think you always in your career need to be able to answer the question, what are you a technical expert in? What are you an absolute expert in? You don't want to be decent at 10 things. I think it's okay to be decent at 10 things, but I think you need to be an expert in at least one thing, whether your path is to go in security or not, or some other field. I think that's all fine. And the reason I say that is there are a lot of things that have parallels, principles that have parallels from one field to another. So if you can go technically deep in at least one area, there are a lot of parallels to other areas that you can draw conclusions from. So it's kind of that combination of broad and deep in at least one or two areas.
I see. And moving on to my next questions. I want to talk about your experiences when you were an undergrad, right? So when you get the full-time grad positions, how much knowledge do you use from the undergrad or from school, and you apply that to your field? How much knowledge?
Yeah, I would say most of my knowledge is from working. What I think the undergrad gives you is it teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to approach problems. It teaches you obviously it teaches you how to write write some code, which I didn't have in high school. So I had to learn it in college. I know, now we're getting more into this, I'm a little older than you guys. So they were starting to roll that out in high schools. But I was a little bit late for my high school had it. But I think being able to write some software, which is, getting a computer to do some things for you, is kind of one of those general fundamentals. I don't think you're going to come out of school being an expert in Python or C. I think you're going to know how to use those tools to help you. And you're going to learn a whole bunch of things. And I think it's okay. I don't expect people to come in and, be a full-blown expert in their field with an undergrad degree. Even as I was kind of jotting down earlier, kind of what our expectations for interns are, a lot of it is curiosity. I want interns to be curious. When we're evaluating our interns and figuring out who we're going to make full-time offers to, it's who's motivated, who wants to be here, who's curious about the way things work. We're not really looking for the interns who are kind of showing up and kind of doing a job, putting some on a resume. Obviously there's knowledge, we expect knowledge, but I would take somebody with less knowledge and more curiosity, because that person will accelerate beyond the other case. Obviously, we want job knowledge. We want knowledge because we don't want to have to train you on everything when you show up. But if you're smart and motivated, that'll get you further than having a certain knowledge today.
All right, cool. Yeah. So, thank you so much for the helpful knowledge. Yeah, that helps a lot with our students. So, my next question would be, so for example, I know that the few clubs on campus here that also focus on cybersecurity, they want to get certain certificates on cybersecurity.
Right.
So I'm not sure how would if you're looking at an undergrad, right, and you look at at them and they have cybersecurity certificate, how would that differentiate against someone just regular students who has an interest in cybersecurity? Again, the question is, does the certificate, does it help more than just no more interest?
So it helps in my mind, not necessarily for I think the common interpretation of being, well, I'm proving that I have this knowledge here. In my mind, that's fine, that helps. But I think the bigger reason is it shows you're motivated. It shows you're capable of learning that knowledge. And even if it's a cert that I don't necessarily need, it shows that you're capable of sitting down and spending the effort. And because some of those certs aren't the most fun things to get, right? And they take a lot of effort. And you're not getting an A for it, right? It's not your classwork. And so it shows that you're willing to, stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever you have to do to study for that. And it tells part of the story of motivation and curiosity.
I see. So, okay. I think with that, I want to move on into the, your specific positions as a director of cybersecurity division, right? So can you tell us about, what is your story of, to be where you are now?
Sure.
Give us a little bit more information on that.
Yeah. So I spent, I guess it was 12 years in wireless comm. I actually left aerospace for a couple of years to go to Northrop Grumman to be a spacecraft specialist, a TT&C specialist, and then I came back and back into the wireless group. And I will say that I knew I wanted to be in management eventually. And here's a kind of a simple piece of advice for people that want to be in management. And that is, and I tell anybody who comes to me and says, I eventually want to be a manager within your group. Our first line managers usually have about 6 people reporting to them. They're called section managers. And I tell every single one of them that I'm going to ask you in the interview to describe your management experience. And, people are taken aback by that because they say, well, this is a first level management job. How are you going to expect me to have a bunch of management experience? And the answer is there's a whole bunch of things you can manage before you're officially a manager. So, and I guess somebody had told that to me because I guess I knew that. So, I started as an individual contributor. I was being kind of told, hey, here's a project, start doing these things. And then I would kind of slowly pick up, project leadership roles, to the point at which I would then be, I would move kind of to an unofficial project lead role to kind of more of an official project lead role, where I've now told the customer I'm going to deliver something and I'm going to use other people to help me build it. And it's kind of my reputation on the line, and so I'm going to make sure that gets done. Well, that's a whole bunch of management. You have to figure out how to motivate people who don't necessarily work for you, right? How do you motivate somebody who you don't control their salary raise or their paycheck? That's an art in and of itself. And I expect people who are applying to like a section manager position to be able to spend 20, 30 minutes telling me about all their history managing certain things. But anyway, so I started as a manager in about 2011, probably, in the wireless group as a section manager. And then I moved over to a director position in what's currently Anthony's group. Spent a couple of years there, and then moved over to the principal director role within cyber. So I've been here for about 3 years, and we are kind of embarking on a leadership role within security for the spacecraft enterprise. We're defining what future secure spacecraft look like, and there's a whole everything. Even my wireless experience helps quite a bit, because one of the ways to attack a spacecraft is through the wireless link. So I'm still, when we talk about being an expert in something, I'm still an expert in wireless communications, and that's where I know cybersecurity, but I wouldn't say I'm a secure software expert, for example. But from a wireless standpoint, that's kind of where I can always deep dive. 5 years from now, I'll be able to deep dive in that area as well as anybody else can go. And I have there's other people within the group that are experts in various parts of the design. But the point is, defining the new spacecraft security standards for the future requires you to secure every element of it. So we have to have experts in ground network security and operating systems and software and binary analysis and links and spacecraft design, et cetera, roots of trust, all the whole thing.
That's a lot of information to learn. And that's why you need a lot of people, right?
Right. No one person can do all that stuff. So that's why, we have to rely on a team to do all that stuff. And if I spent my life trying to be an expert in every field, it'd be a long time before I was an expert in every field. So you have to rely on other people. You have to find people you can trust to help. I
see. And I think for our campus, there's a lot of opportunity for students who really interested in working in the aerospace field. So we have sure. Northrop, right, and Lockheed and a major aerospace corporation. So what makes aerospace corporations a unique to any other competitions? Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those are all great companies, and I'm sure they have really good opportunities as well. The thing that makes the aerospace unique is that we're a nonprofit FFRDC, so we get paid no matter which one of those guys wins the contract. And our job is not to help a contractor win a contract. Our job is to make sure the government gets the right solution. And there are, what it ultimately means is, at least within ETG, I think one of your questions you had sent earlier was about what your daily routine is, and maybe you're gonna ask me that, but one of the things that makes my job really unique is I don't have a daily routine. Every day is a new, call it chaos, call it adventure, whatever. But there is no day like any other day in my position, which will drive some people crazy. I like it. I kind of thrive in that environment. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's always problems that are coming up. We are always trying to kind of triage the problems, figure out what to solve now, what can we solve now, who can solve it efficiently. Is this even the right problem? Are we even asking the right questions? And I think because we're not focused, and this is specifically within ETG in my company, because we're not focused on a particular program, we're not going through the life cycle of a program. We're dealing with programs in every different life cycle. We have programs that are still in conception. We have programs that are still a PowerPoint chart at this point. We have programs like GPS that have been around for years, and we're trying to figure out how to build more of them, and everything in between. And so sometimes you'll I've been in situations where I'm arguing about a PowerPoint chart, and there's a $10 million decision in a PowerPoint chart, and and we have to sit there and argue about it. I'm not staring at the spacecraft; I'm staring at some words in a chart. But depending on what you put in there, there's a many $million decision there. And also, of course, now we've dealt with problems where there's an operational spacecraft that's having an issue. I think I started with my intern program telling you about that, where there's an operational system. It's already up there. We're not going to get it. And there may be an issue on board, and we're trying to figure out and diagnose what that issue is. Those are vastly different problems. You still online? Tuan, you still on?
I see people on, but not him.
I think Tuan. I think he got dropped this time.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
I disconnected. Let me see if I can get him back in here. Oh, he's back.
Sorry about that, guys. So yeah,
no
very sorry. So what did we talk to about?
Oh, just talking about that when you're saying that what's the difference between an internship here versus some other places, and I think the big one with an ETG is that just there's no day like any other day. I think that's and I tell everybody in full-time interviews too. I tell people you have to make sure you have the personality that's going to thrive in that environment. There's some people that want to know what they're doing every day. If you have the mentality that I have to know what tomorrow's going to look like, it's actually not a great spot for that mentality. So it's a good spot for people who want different problems. They want things to be different every day. There'll always be problems. And sometimes you can use information from one problem to help solve another problem. So it's a little less chaotic than that. But I don't get to know what the problems of next week are until next week.
I see. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a very interesting environment. In that you don't know what to expect in the next day, and so I want to relate that into our if the students are looking for the cybersecurity as a cybersecurity interns or a new grad, what are they expecting, or I guess are they expecting the kind of environment that you're in right now, or are they expecting a different environment? Can you clarify on that?
Yeah. So we always give our interns meaningful data and as close to usually spot on the type of work you would do as a full-time employee. It's never made up work. It's always real life problems. We have multiple meetings, or the managers have multiple meetings to talk about what's appropriate for an intern. We're not going to set them up for failure, right? We're going to give them a project that's doable, or multiple, but we want to make sure we're carving out a piece that is something that's a meaningful contribution to the future of where we're going. Something they usually can build, right? We're usually doing some sort of prototype development with interns. Almost always doing something like that. But the reason that's really important to give the interns kind of meaningful, realistic projects is because at the end of the day, if we have had a whole summer and the intern doesn't know if they're a fit for the company, and we don't know if the intern's a fit for the company, then we've failed, right? Our number one job is for both people to evaluate that. We may like an intern a lot. We've had this situation where we've liked an intern. We wanted to extend a full-time offer, and they said, I don't really like, this isn't really the environment I want. And that's a perfectly rational decision. But they need to make that decision with accurate information, having a real life experience. And same with us. We've had interns that say, I really want to work here. And, maybe that we haven't seen the fit on our end. But you don't want to start a job. We don't want to hire somebody in a full-time position when it's not a good fit. And you don't want to start in a full-time position somewhere when it's not a good fit. So it's really important for us, at least in my organization and the other organizations I've been in, to make sure we're really giving actual work to the interns.
And I think that I think we can move on into the kind of projects that the students would be expected to work on, right? So
Sure.
I'm not sure if if this is talkable or if it's classified or not, but can you describe what kind of projects would an intern be working on if they got admitted into your sections of such cybersecurity?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you a couple of examples. So a lot of our West Coast interns last year were working on defensive cyber operations tools. So these are tools that there's both rules-based and AI-based tools that we're building to look for anomalies and try and classify them when they are on a space system. So we have in our lab, we have a mock-up of a space system. There's a ground infrastructure talking into all the wireless and crypto devices going up to a spacecraft. And we are monitoring all of the network communication, all of the activities, all the states of all the endpoints. Some of it's traditional IT equipment on the ground, but in the spacecraft, you don't have traditional IT equipment. We don't fly servers in space, so the endpoints look a lot different, right? It's much more custom hardware, and we're gathering data and we're trying to detect and then classify attacks. That's one big thing. There's a lot of different tools to write that or to design that. And you need to be careful and thoughtful about what you're doing there, because if I over detect and I tell you there's an attack every hour, I'm going to waste a bunch of time running around trying to look for false alarms. But at the same time, if I under detect, then you're going to, you may have an active attack going on for minutes before you detect it. I need to detect attacks in frankly milliseconds, but seconds at least. And there's a whole bunch of work we're doing with automated recovery, automated defensive mechanisms that we're doing as well. So that's what a lot of the West Coast interns were working on. On the East Coast, we were working on a lot of assessment tools to essentially be the red team, be the bad guy, and try and break into these systems, and then diagnose how you broke in, what was the vulnerability you exploited, and therefore a typical red team assessment. Therefore, you can tell the good guys, since you're the red team, you can tell them what they should have fixed, how you got in and how to defend against it. So those are two kind of basic examples.
I see. It sounds like a game to me. To be honest, like the West Coast versus the East Coast. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't designed that way on purpose, but that's kind of there are two different departments, and it's kind of the where they've resonated to.
I see. And I think like for those topics or the projects that the intern is working on, I'm not sure what is the theoretical knowledge, or is it more practical, more hands-on experience that the intern will work on? How much of it is theoretical?
I would say most of it's practical, hands-on. I don't think we're expecting people, particularly with undergrad degrees, just starting off their career, to have a lot of the theory. But they should. What we really expect people to do is know how systems work. One of the questions I always used to ask interns when I was doing more of the frontline hiring was a basic question about computer science, but it got into what's the computer actually doing? What's the CPU actually doing when you're writing code? Because I found, and it's just me, I found a lot of people were very good developers, but they didn't always know when I wrote a line of code here, or I wrote a loop that does whatever, what's the CPU actually doing? I'm not necessarily expecting people to know, CPU architecture, like at the PhD level, but I am expecting people to know generally what the CPU is doing, and therefore really understanding when I ask a computer to do something, what am I really asking it to do, or how it's going to interpret certain things. And the reason is not because you're necessarily going to use that, specifically in your day job. I don't think we're going to tell Intel how to design a processor, but knowing that really helps you put things in perspective of what's an attack doing. When packets are going around a network, how do they traverse a network, right? Those are the kinds of things that I think you should have in-depth knowledge on. How does routing work? I don't expect you to go tell Cisco how to make a router, but you should know what a router is doing. You should know how it interprets packets. You should know that kind of thing, because and then from there, I think you can apply a lot of the security.
I see. All right. So I think at this point, I will open it up for any, the Q&A section for anyone to ask any questions. So if you guys have any questions, I'll let a few minutes of silence so that everyone can think of a question to ask. But right now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, and yeah, we'll let Ryan know.
Sure.
Cool. All right. I think while everyone is waiting for to ask questions, I literally have one question I asked. My friend asked before, which is what valuable subsets of cybersecurity is Aerospace Corporation is looking for? Is there any subset? Is there any specific things they're looking for? Maybe reverse engineering, wireless communication, like you said. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we have to have people that have expertise in all these different areas, but it's not going to be one individual. It's just too many areas. So we're absolutely looking for people with kind of malware reverse engineering skills is one. Threat hunting and red teaming experience is another really good one. It's not really for undergrads, but spacecraft experience is another really good one. But that's something you usually pick up as you work some. So I don't expect an intern to have a lot of knowledge there. Embedded security, roots of trust, and things like that is another really big one for us. That we are constantly looking for talent in that area. Again, it's there's some classes and some things, but being able to demonstrate that curiosity and that interest in that, so that's gonna bore some people and they're not gonna want to do it, but it's going to be really interesting to a certain group of people, and I think that's something that we're always looking for.
I see. All right. I'll wait for 2 more minutes. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Okay.
Hey Ryan, I do have a quick question for you. Lately, I've been looking into a lot of ICS security and the kind of compliance have to follow, which is like NERC. I was curious, what does Aerospace have to follow?
Yeah, you're talking about the work we do within ICS or the policies.
Oh, the policies, and also what kind of work you do. That's pretty interesting. I imagine you do some custom software builds for monitoring different things.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And that was actually something I should have added when Tuan was asking about the what interns do. We also have an East Coast group that's doing a lot of defensive cyber operations for ICS equipment. Certainly people the protecting the power grids and things like that have been a big deal for 10 or 15 years now. We don't really get into that, but we in a spacecraft ground system there is a bunch of ICS equipment. You can imagine there's fire suppression systems, there's air conditioning systems, there's antenna controllers and all kinds of stuff. And so it is important that we protect those systems as well. We don't drive the policy there, but we do implement some prototypes and some things like that to help support that.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, the things like PLCs and the security revolving around those seems like a field that's barely starting to move.
Yeah.
Over the past couple of years. I took part in a competition a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to log into a PLC, which monitored dam water flow, and I was able to overwrite memory and stuff. And I guess that's a pretty normal thing from what I gathered. in my
Right.
research over the internet. But thank you for the answer.
Yeah, and if you're if you're interested in that stuff, you can have Tuan send me your resume, and I can send you to the appropriate group. Most of that work for us is done on the East Coast.
Cool. Yeah. I'll send some. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Yeah, I think then I think if move on to my next question would be so right now we're probably in the West Coast, right? So is it okay for the West Coast to move to the East Coast and work over there? What are do you have any quota that you have to meet on the East Coast versus the West Coast, or they are transferable?
You mean, do we let people move across, or do we encourage people to move across?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about interns, or you're talking about full-time?
Interns.
Yeah. So our last internship class, we were hoping would be in person, as they all have been in the past. Obviously COVID didn't go away, so it was a 100% virtual internship program last year. Yeah, I'm very hopeful that next summer we will be back to kind of normal operations and people will be in the office. So for that, we have the intern move temporarily to the site that is appropriate for the job. And there are some jobs where you could do the job effectively from either site. The ICS example, that's work's been done by our East Coast group, so our West Coast group just doesn't do it. So that person would be on the East Coast. But there's some jobs like if you're a really good pen tester, for example, there's positions in both coasts, even Colorado for us that would use some of that stuff. I know in Anthony's group, if a good AI person would be able to find a home usually in at least LA or the East Coast. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And same with software engineering. I mean, there's software engineers that are hired by my group, by Anthony's group, by 10 other groups in the company, and so you can find particular internships in lots of different places.
I see. Cool. So I think I'll let one more minute for any questions. But if anyone doesn't have any questions, I'll end the meeting at 1 o'clock. Okay. So are you living in the East Coast, or are you living in the West Coast?
I live in the West Coast.
I see.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Bay Area, and the plan was, once I went to UCLA, the plan was to go back to the Bay Area after, and that never happened. Stayed at Aerospace and got comfortable.
I see. never thought something like that would happen. But
right.
All right. Cool. Looks like people are heading to class. So I think I'm just gonna end the meeting right now. And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the Aerospace Corporation for taking the time, and especially you, Ryan, for taking the time to answer all of our questions. We do really have I appreciate your helpful insights. So we'll look forward to connect with you with our students, and if anything, I'll talk to you more.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. See you, everyone. Take care. Have a good class.